It's when we decide that we're going to be all things to all people is when we start walking in that lie. And when we walk in that lie, we are doomed to repeat history of failure after failure after failure because we're not walking in our authenticity.
Hello, I'm your host, Evelyn Clark, and this is the 6-Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations with amazing, incredible people all about what it takes to be 6-star, going beyond the status quo, doing things differently, and how they bring purpose, love, and impact into their businesses every day. She made me laugh. She made both of us laugh. She inspired us, and she made us look at ourselves and ask the honest questions. This is Monica Henderson, and this guest of mine is also a new friend of mine, someone I admire greatly because she's so real. She just says it as it is in her language. And this conversation is about inviting people to be themselves and not be afraid to be themselves and to find their tribe using their own voice and use their gifts to help create the world that they really want to live in. And a lot more. Monica's beautiful, she's inspirational, and she gives us a bunch of gems as well as her story in this conversation. I know you're going to love it as much as we did. This is Monica Henderson. Hello, here we are. Another episode of 6-Star Business Podcast. I am here with my co-host today, Steve Sandor. Steve, how are you doing?
Yes, very well. A bit of rain here in Brisbane, coming to Easter, so obviously that's what's happening.
Yep, the weather is changing. We are exiting summer, unfortunately. We have a lovely guest, and her name is Monica Henderson. How are you, Monica?
I'm doing fantastic. We also had rain here today, but unfortunately we're going into spring, which is weird for Los Angeles.
Oh, well. Weather talk. Who would have guessed? Start of a podcast. All right. 6-Star Business Podcast. We talk about the weather. Yes.
That's
the important things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we like rain and also season changes because it's about life, right? And where we go into different phases of ourselves and our life and our businesses, just like the weather. So I think it's very relevant. Yeah.
There you go. Well,
yep.
Good recovery, yeah.
Thank you. Well, Monica, you've already let the cat out of the bag of where you live, but I've got a couple of questions for you just to get to know you a bit for our audience. Who do you serve and how do you serve them? And also, what's something you like to do when you're not busy serving people?
Great questions. So who do I serve? Currently, I am surrounding myself with supporting thought leaders, change makers, coaches, and experts. And what that looks like are life coaches, your business coaches, marketers and branders and salespeople, but also people who have networking groups and things of that sort. And forgot the second question. But what I do to serve
how do you serve them? Yeah. How do you serve them? Yeah.
What I do to serve them is I have created a collaborative learning ecosystem that supports them in all of the pieces that are in between the learning. What I have found is especially coaches are information hoarders. They go to everything, every motivational talk, every workshop. If someone's giving information, they're there with a notebook, collecting all this stuff, and then they do nothing with it. And so what we do in our ecosystem is we kind of remind them that hey, there's a lot of stuff you already know. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to use it? We also remind them of, you already know, so there are some things that you didn't know. And so now's the time for you to go and actually get that information. So instead of looking at the same information over and over again. And the last piece is we guide them through a journey that helps them understand what they didn't know they don't know, because it's really the only way you can figure that out. And in that process, we are there in support of them, real people offering real help in real time. So that's what we get to do. And what I do for fun, believe it or not, even though I am a very highly effective person and I get a lot of stuff done, I also watch so much television. It is ridiculous. I binge watch everything, and there are so many shows. I've gotten to the end of Netflix, so I spend a lot of time consuming lots of TV, lots of movies, comedy shows, you name it, I watch it. So yeah, that's kind of what I do for fun. Well, especially since the pandemic. So,
that just made me laugh because I thought I'm sure there are so many people like closet binge watchers that are just going, oh, thank God there's someone else that's binge watchers like me.
I'm still efficient with it though. So like I don't watch live TV. I record everything. I watch it without commercials so I can get through as much of it as I possibly can. Yeah. So there's still the high efficiency person in there, but consuming things at light speed. So there you go.
Oh, that's good, Gold. So I would love to know about your journey. Could you share with us, Monica, what has been the journey that's brought you to where you are today to be serving people in the way you are and doing what you're doing and being who you are today?
Yeah. So everything in my life is accidental and intentional all at exactly the same time. I like to say all the time, there are two things can be true at the same time. So my life and how I am serving people, absolutely intentional. How I got here was a series of serendipitous accidents that allowed me to be in this space. When I was 28, I said that I was going to work hard for 10 years. And at the end of the 10 years, I was going to stop working for money and start working towards impact. So I was going to retire. And then in the process of kind of like trying to figure out what I was going to do, because, there's a lot of people out there probably felt the way that I felt. I know I wanted to help people. I knew that for a fact. Like I was for sure of that. I was sure of that since I was 12. But I'm not really good at anything, right? Like anything in particular. There was not one thing that was like, this is my thing. I know I can help people in this way. And so I just tried a bunch of different things that were in service. Like I tried sales and retail. I tried personal assisting. I tried all kinds of things throughout my adult life. And when I had got to this point at 28 and kind of like conceptualizing my life and what I want and deciding that like, okay, I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur. I got the tattoo just so I could be unemployable. Cause I'm done with this W-2 life of it all. Which makes no sense because the tattoo is completely in a place that's completely hidden by real clothes. So it was just really all in my head. It had nothing to do with what real life looked like. And in that process of kind of trying to figure out what I want, I ended up stumbling into a bunch of different things. In this portion of my life, found myself homeless with a 2-year-old. And that propelled me to decide to change my life and decide to write a story. But that's not the important part. The important part was that I went through rewriting my life and coming up with an intentional plan of what I wanted to do. When I got to the end of that particular plan, I didn't know what else I was supposed to do. I had manifested everything that I wanted in that period of time. I was no longer homeless. I lived exactly in the city that I wanted to live in. I got to, throw the parties that I wanted to throw for my daughter. I was quite the socialite in downtown Los Angeles, going to networking events and mixers and parties and country clubs, the whole thing. I got all the things. And I got to that point, I was like, okay, so now what? I'm here. And what people don't tell you all the time about success and like getting where you want to go is that's your new floor when you get there. And when before it was your ceiling, right? Like when I was homeless, that was like the ceiling. That was like the top. That was the like, where I've made it. And then here we are. I'm here. And I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do next? So my husband and I go on a date because we have date nights on a regular basis. So we go out on a date and we go to this lovely rooftop hotel and I go find a little cabana for us to sit in, and it's really cute, overlooking the city. He goes up to the bar to order some food while I sit at the cabana, and a girl comes over that I have met in my neighborhood and just, hey, how's it going? 10 minutes later, she's crying and I'm rubbing her back and we're having this whole Oprah moment, right? In the corner of the bar. My husband comes back with drinks in his hand, looking at me with some woman that he doesn't recognize, doesn't remember. She's crying and she goes, oh my God, your wife is so amazing. Oh my God, she's so inspirational and so motivational. And he was like, okay, I just went to get drinks. This is date night. This is not really the sexy kind of date night I was expecting, but okay, whatever. So I take the drinks. I say, okay, here's my phone number. Call me. We can talk another time. I just do want to finish, the date with my husband. Flash forward to another moment. We're walking in the mall and there's a person off crying off to the side. And, I like stop him and say, hold on for a second. I walk over to the lady and I go, I don't know what you're going through, but could you use a hug? And she's, absolutely. And she stands up and she hugs me and she just sobs on my shoulder for like a couple of minutes. And I just tell her, everything's going to be okay. I know this is really a rough time, but you'll get through this. Right. So she's like, thank you so much. And then she goes off about her day. I go about my day. I don't know her name. I still don't know her name to this day. We never crossed paths again. But after that second time, my husband was like, listen, we can't keep going out and you having Oprah moments and like healing the sick. And like, these people are not your friends. Like you invest so much in them. Clearly, this is what you naturally do. You are a support system for people. And I didn't even notice that lady was crying. And you somehow picked up on the fact that this woman was in pain. You probably should pursue this because this is something that you're really, really good at naturally. And I was like, but I didn't think I had any talent. I thought I was like, just walking the earth, just kind of so much good at everything that I do. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I hear you. But where I was in the business space at the time, I was making dresses for Orthodox Jewish women, wedding gowns and formal wear, custom dresses. So nowhere near the coaching space. Like these are like opposite places. But what I was doing during that particular time with those women was I was doing lots of dressing room counseling sessions as they were talking about all the stresses of their wedding and all of the inner family kind of turmoil that was happening because weddings are like the best time of your life. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. This is what a wedding is, right? And so I was in the trenches with people on a regular basis, consoling them, counseling them, giving them advice, and really kind of, helping them stay present and in the moment and remembering kind of what the best parts are, giving them some affirmations and motivation to kind of get through some of the harder times. So I was actually in practice in this entire time, but it was never what I was selling. I was selling, creating custom experiences for these brides. So I decided that I was going to have to make a pivot because in all of my networking, I've been the lady who makes dresses, right? Because that's how you build your business. You go out, you network, you tell people this is what you do. And now I have to tell all these people that I make dresses that I actually am a business consultant and a life coach. And that doesn't seem like that matches. It doesn't seem like that lines up. And so I start creating networking groups. I got the networking group that I was a part of. I asked them if there was, one of the directors was like, you'd probably be good at being a director. And I was like, oh, well, let me see what that looks like. So I took that as a part-time job and I started kind of coaching people in networking. And in coaching people in networking, kind of teaching them about how to present themselves fashionably, because I was still transitioning from this, I am the fashion person to I am the business person giving you consulting advice, but like personal branding is what I kind of started as. And I started talking to them about like how they present themselves and how to pull themselves together and all of the things of that sort. And in that process, they did start to see like, hey, you actually know more than dresses and you know more than networking. Well, what about this? And what about that? And I was like, well, I've been a business junkie my entire life. I accidentally ended up in an Orthodox Jewish couture. So all of those things that I had learned all those years of going to grant writing classes and being just like all other coaches and experts, hoarding all of this information that I am not applying in any kind of a way, I can actually kind of regurgitate that and share it with other people. But how do I do that in a way that is going to be like continuously the same result? And like, what does that look like? So I read a bunch of books, right? I read books about self-help. I looked at programs that I could technically buy so that I could become a salesperson. And I hated them. They were so irresponsible. They would teach you one tiny part of business and neglect all the rest of them. There were so many other parts of business that are factors to you being able to do this one thing, and they neglected it. Or they only focused on the mindset, but they didn't focus on any of the practical parts of doing stuff. Or they focused on all the practical parts and didn't focus on the mindset. And I thought, well, this is weird. How come I can't find just one program to sell myself through that has all of these parts together? I apparently am a bespoke kind of a girl because I just had to create what I couldn't find. And so I decided, with the nudging of the universe, because my 38th birthday came along and Father Time and I had a conversation about like, hey, remember that promise you had 10 years ago that you were only going to work hard for 10 years? Time's up, baby. What you going to do? And I had nothing in place. I had just came to this realization that I am going to fully go into this coaching space, and I had nothing. So I decided to take a broke year. I call it the broke ass year, right? I took a year. I stopped taking clients. I stopped talking to people about things. I went inward and started focusing on like, how do I pull together all of the knowledge that I have within me into a program that will systematically get people through things. And so I did that. And then at the same time, I was like, but I don't want to be one of those irresponsible people. One of those people who are like, just going to focus on this one part and ignore all the other parts. And what I knew about working with people in general is you can't do the business without fixing the personal. The personal comes into play every single solitary time if it's not together. So I thought, okay, I have all of these things that I teach, that I know how to teach. How do I put it together? I know you have to fix the life before you could do anything with the business, because as a business owner, we are our worst enemies. There is no enemy outside of us. There is no competition. It's the little shitty brain, us and us. That's who we're competing against. And if we don't do something about that first, if we don't organize our lives and get our lives together, then that part itself will sabotage everything else we're going to do. So you kind of have to build your business from the inside out, which I had already kind of started doing from this process of me pulling my life together. And then I know for sure business, because I've studied it. I've hoarded this information. Oh, I have all the things on how to organize a business. I got that. That's exciting. So if I help them organize their life and I give them all the information I have about business, there's this other part about like branding that kind of is necessary. And this other part about networking, which apparently people aren't good at making friends. We all kind of apparently forgot what it was like to go on the playground and just ask somebody if they want to play with you and then kind of engage in that process. Like we all forgot that when we left high school somehow. And so people were terrified and scared to make new friends. And that's all that networking is. And so in the process of what I was going to teach, I decided it was going to be life, business, branding, and networking. And once I pulled that together, then the system girl in me was like, okay, now how are we going to systematically teach this to people? So I created all of these different modules that covered everything in a systematic way. And then I was like, okay, but how do I make this responsible? Because I think it's brilliant. But if somebody who has like real degrees in this stuff doesn't think it's brilliant, then it won't matter. Right. So I decided that I would talk to therapists, because they would tell me if I'm like accidentally causing harm from somebody. Because sometimes when we help people, we think we're being helpful, and sometimes we can be causing trauma. So I had a therapist vet my program. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is amazing. Did you go to school for therapy? And I was like, no, I did not. I did not go to school for therapy. She's like, you didn't? I was like, no. She's like, where'd you come up with this? And I said, well, It was from my own journey of trying to get my own life together, trying to build a business, learning how to personally brand myself, and teaching all these networking groups. So it's like all the things that I put together. And then I just systemized it so that it walks people through in a certain way. And she's like, well, that's brilliant. You don't know this, but you've used cognitive behavioral therapy, behavior modification, reality therapy. And I was like, oh, thank you. You just saved me thousands upon thousands of dollars of going back to school to get a degree so that I can say it does these things. Thank you. And then I said, do you have any other therapists? Are there any other therapists that you can refer me to so I can have them go through it too and see how it felt for them and to see, to get this. So I had 12 therapists vet my program to make sure that it was sound therapeutically. And then I had one of my friends, great friend, Andrea Gerwertz, who was the NLP, is the NLP coach. And I asked her to go over all of the words in my program. I wanted to make sure that I did not accidentally cause harm. And I was going to find all the people who had the intelligence to do it. And so she went through and she changed all of the words that weren't NLP sound, that kind of like aligned properly. And I was like, okay, this is great. And so I have all these things. I say, okay, it's time to launch this program. I try to launch the program by doing what every coach does. If I'm going to launch a program, I have to have an event at a hotel, in a conference room, in a conventional way. And I have to invite people to come to it, do this big production of it. And at the end of the big production, ask them to buy the program. So I go through all the steps. I hire a corporate event planner. I put the deposit down for the hotel room, the conference room in the hotel, nice hotel near LAX. So nobody has any problems about traffic. We all had to drive through traffic. So no one can complain. And then we pick the date for April 24th of 2020. Yep. Yep. I know you're thinking it. You're like, oh, sis. Yes. It was tragic. It was so incredibly tragic. I was so upset. So upset because I was like, I spent an entire year being broke so I could vet this program and create all these things. And this was supposed to be my big launch. I was doing it right. I did everything by the book. And here we are, whole world shut down, completely shut down. Like there is no way this event is happening. So I cried to my friend, Andrea, who helped me NLP the program. She's like, baby, it's a beautiful program. You should probably still do something, even if it's virtual, just do something because people need to know that this exists. And I was like, whatever. Like, I guess I'll think about it. Still kind of licking my wounds because it was really tragic, And while I was licking my wounds and kind of watching TV, I realized I noticed something. I watched the news and I saw that the anchor was in her kitchen telling a story about something that was happening down the way because she couldn't leave her apartment because we were all quarantined into our little box. Like we were all on that timeout. Like it wasn't just us regular people. It was everybody was in that same timeout. And the anchor on the news was doing this from her apartment. And the weather lady, they shipped a green screen to her house and she was doing that from her house because her kid kept walking through the screen. And then I noticed over and over again that like all of these people who had a lot of money, had to do the same thing the rest of us do. Shush their family and tell them, go in the room. I need to work. And like be in their houses on screen talking to people. And I thought, wait a minute. This is like the most perfect time to be a small business. This is actually the best possible thing that could happen to us because in the end, it leveled the playing field for all of us. We all had to use the same shitty tools, right? Like we all had to use Zoom or Teams or whatever the platform was. None of us could leave our house and we couldn't buy your way out of the situation. So the more money you had didn't matter. You had to do the same thing. You had to be all over social media. You had to, get people to come to Zoom calls with you. You had to do the same things. I thought, wait a minute, how come no one's saying this is the best time for entrepreneurs? They're all saying that this is the worst time to be an entrepreneur and the economy is bad. And like, but no. This is the best time. Like, this is great. I better hurry up. I got to hurry up and do everything I possibly can during this time before they open the world back up. And I'm left behind again. I got to make as much as I possibly can during this time. I got to like meet as many people as I can at a time because they're all stuck at home, just like I am, which means this is the perfect time to meet them. They're bored too. So I began to think I need to reach out to other people. And so I put a post out on Facebook. It was an all text post. And I said, calling all dynamic speakers. If you're a change maker, a thought leader, a coach, an expert, or someone who has something nice to say, your voice is needed right now. And when I put that post out, here's why I know it wasn't really, I'm not that magical. I mean, I'd like to think that I was magical and that like, you know, everybody just loves to follow me and I'm an influencer in that way, but I am not that magical because I have not been able to repeat this particular success again, which makes me think that it was all about the magic of the time. So I put that post out. There are no pictures on this post. It is literally just text. I got 269 comments saying, oh, that's me. Oh, I have a lot to say. Oh, I want to share. And I thought, holy crap, I've never had, like, not even on my cutest selfie, not even the pictures of my child got this many comments on it. So what is happening here? There's something crazy here. It's magical. So I go ahead and I take this opportunity. Okay. So all these people are saying them. I just should start talking to people. So I started messaging each person who commented and I said, hey, let's hop on a Zoom. Let's hop on a Zoom. And I had my business partner do the same thing. And she hopped on a bunch of Zooms and we're talking to people and we're like, hey, we're thinking about doing a conference. And we had no idea how we were going to pull this off, by the way. It was full bullshit, right? Like full, like we're thinking about pulling all these people together to do this event that I had planned from the 24 topics that I was going to cover in my program. But what I realized is I made that for everyone else too. And I don't have to be the expert talking about it. It should just be a expert talking about it. And so I was like, let's plug them into all the places. So we started talking to them and we're saying, hey, we're going to do this thing. Are you in? They're like, I'm in. Count me in. And I talked to the corporate event planner. I was like, okay, so we're going to rework the whole thing. It's going to be all virtual. She's like, oh, no. You can't do this virtual. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do this virtual? You can't do it virtual. No one's going to sit on Zoom for 8 hours. Like you have to shorten it to 3 hours. Like no one's going to do that. And I was like, well, we kind of all have TV watching on a 24-hour system. When people are done, they turn it off. And if they're engaged, they stay on. Hello. That's what Netflix is banking on, right? That we're going to sit there and watch episode after episode after episode as long as it keeps moving. So it's fine. They'll turn it off when it's done. So they stayed. And I launched this accidental global virtual conference with 43 speakers covering 24 topics in life, business, branding, and networking. And they all stayed. I couldn't get them off my Zoom. I kept saying, okay, guys, because I had to learn Zoom that week and put together a bunch of PowerPoints. I was tired. I had done all the work before then. There was no sleep for me. I was like, oh, I love that you love each other. Come back tomorrow. Like, you gotta go. Like, I need to shut this down. So I shut it down. The next day they came back even more on fire, even more willing to share and give and love and grow together. And it was exactly what we needed at the time. And I was like, well, look at that. That was a happy accident. We have this whole conference. So we built this conference. And then I say, well, I'm thinking maybe I should do this again, just flippantly at the end of this conference. And 11 volunteers said, well, when you do the next one, I'm in. I'll do it with you. What? Oh, okay. So in the process, they then tried my program, became licensed in it, and became teachers of my program. I then went on to do 21 global virtual conferences in Australia, in South Africa, in London, in Los Angeles, and built an entire community based on thought leadership being two things at exactly the same time. We made it okay to be absolutely brilliant in your one zone of genius and a complete moron in everything else. And that is completely okay. And in the process of doing that, we all learned from each other. We all grew together. We all collaborated together. People went into business together because of these things. People learned more about themselves, deepened relationships, and they grew. They became healthier, wealthier, and more fulfilled by having these kinds of experiences. And then I just decided that's the world that I'm going to create. And that is literally the accidental stepping into this crazy community that I've created. I didn't do what I am doing on purpose, but I did set an intention that I was going to help people live healthier, wealthier, and more fulfilled. And in the process, the weird, windy road that got me there, it allowed me to actually kind of create this very, very inclusive space where everyone can be brilliant and share their passions, their love, their expertise, and also learn at exactly the same time. No gurus here, just everybody being human and learning. And that is my journey to being in business.
I love hearing from you, and I love that story. We've had some moments before this conversation, and I've learned other parts of your journey, and this is all new. So I just freaking love it. What I also love is the way that you, in the moment, you can pivot, you can be flexible and go, oh, that's happening. Well, how about this? I'm a bit slower. I process things and I'm not so quick to respond in the moment. And I envy that in you, that you've got this ability to just go boom, boom. Oh, how about this? How about this? Let's look at this.
Survivor's response, right? Coming from a childhood of that could be perceived as extremely traumatic, you have to learn that you don't have time to wallow in your feelings about something. You have to get to safety first. And then at that point, you can then you can worry about those feelings, but safety first, then feelings, as opposed to the other way around. So I do feel like that is a bit of that childhood journey of that teaching that kind of came from something is happening. We don't have time to freak out about it. We just have to make decisions that are going to keep us to survive. And some people fight, some people freeze, right? Some people flight. And I kind of I go into action. I'm like, all right, let's go. So I always say, I joke with my daughter. I said, it's going to be me, you, and the roaches, baby. When all of this is done, we are going to survive. It is all good. So.
I'm gobsmacked. I was so enthralled by that whole story, Monica. What really stood out for me, and I think it actually came through in how you were talking. You mentioned you want to help people at 12 years of age. From that, I'd love to hear what that was that sort of triggered that moment that went, yep, I'm going to help people. Yeah. And at 12, right? The other one was, and I think this is what you bring, and I'd love your comments on this, is that you said that we've forgotten, as kids, we go into the playground and we just play, right? It doesn't matter, oh, you're my height. You seem to be in the same place. Do you want to hang out, right? And there's no judgment. There's no question about that. And we have lost that ability. So, 2 questions. What happened at 12?
At 12.
And yeah, and how have you been able to enthuse people into that sort of playground of life?
Yeah. So, I suffered from social anxiety. I call them the invisible years. So from birth to 12, I did not speak to anyone outside of my family. I was terrified. I always had one best friend, right, at school, but I was not the kid who was like, okay, let's go talk to, oh, you're a new kid on the play. I was not that kid. I was shy, introverted, but it actually, I had physical pain when it came to reaching out to people and talking to people. And it sounds super tragic. And earlier last week, someone was like, how did that feel to be that way? And I was like, I didn't know there was supposed to be any other way to feel. So it felt normal to me. Right. But the beautiful part about being invisible is you don't get dismissed and people don't really realize you're listening. And so in that process of being always around, a fly on the wall and not being dismissed, I was able to be really observant. And what I remember and what I try to remember is that adults make things way more complicated than they have to be. And I remember saying that to my parents were arguing about something. And I was like, my parents are like oil and water, like can never be in the same room at the same time. And they were arguing about something, but they were saying the same thing, just different ways, but they weren't listening to each other. And I thought, they're making it harder than this has to be. Like, it's really simple. Like, life is really simple. And I remember always thinking that when I'm listening to adults talk about how hard life was. And so from all of those years of kind of listening, when I decided that I was going to not be ignored, and it really came down to this one moment. I went to a theme park. We were really religious, and I went to a theme park on a field trip with a bunch of kids from my church. And my mom was the designated driver. After the bus came and dropped us off at church, she was going to drop off all the kids. And I remember being in the car and them playing back the story and telling me what happened as though I wasn't there. And I was like, I was there the entire time. I've seen everything you guys saw. And I thought, I have no effect on other people at all. Like I'm just here. It was like first time that I like realized that was happening. And I thought, what, that probably shouldn't be. Like, I should probably have some sort of impact on like what is happening in the space. And so because I also, had this terrible anxiety, I had to kind of create a way for me to be able to choose. And I remember having a very specific conversation with myself saying like, hey, you haven't died. I mean, I know we feel like we're going to die every single time we try to talk to somebody or we have to do these things that like make us feel uncomfortable, but you haven't died yet. So maybe you're not actually going to die. Like maybe it's just like, it's like a lie. Like maybe it's a fake response, and thinking like, okay, well, but I also don't want to be any of those complicated adults, right? Like I don't want to just live the way that they live because they have so many regrets, and they say stuff like, oh, I was young and dumb and I don't want to be young and dumb. And, oh, like I really regret. And I was like, I don't want to live with regret. Like, I don't want to do any of those things. So I had made this decision that when I decided I was going to like live out loud, that I would choose how and what, no matter what anybody else thought. I wasn't going to become an insecure person out, because I might as well stay where I am. Right. I might as well stay invisible if I'm going to be insecure. So I'm just going to live fully and not care what anybody thinks about it, because they spend all their time thinking about what other people are thinking and they made bad decisions. So don't do that. Right. And when I made that decision, I kind of was trying to reflect, but like, what am I going to do? And I needed a plan in order to do that, because I mean, if anybody lives with, anxiety or depression, that like everything is scary like everything you want is on the other side of that fear, but it's all scary. And the best way to kind of get through something scary is to at least have a game plan, like a roadmap, like, okay, so we're going to do it this way and we're going to have these things in place. And so that was kind of what I did for myself. I like kind of put these rules into place of like how I was going to interact with the world and how I was going to keep myself safe in this outside of my body space. And also what kind of adult I was trying to become, because that was important to me at that time. I wanted to become the adult that didn't have all that weird stuff that other adults have. And I thought, I don't have any talent though. So what if, like, what am I going to become, or what am I going to do? And I remember thinking about the Virgin Mary. I was like, it's interesting. This Mary lady has like no actual talent, but birthing and nurturing Jesus. But she nurtured like the GOAT, right? Like the greatest of all time. Like she nurtured someone who went on to change the world in a completely profound way. Oh, I can nurture people. That's easy. I take care of my mom and my brothers and all of my family members all the time, right? And I don't have to be special. I can just be a muse to them. I can be inspirational to them. I can be supportive to them. They can be great. And then I will have changed the world. And that was when I realized that like, that was what my path was. But it came from all of that angst, right? It came from me like trying to figure out like, how do I make my weird worked for me. Like, all of the weird things that were on worked for me. And yeah, so the Virgin Mary was the inspiration for me deciding that I could nurture my way to changing the world, and not have to be the star. Although the spotlight keeps trying to find me. So now I'm just comfortable with it. Like, and I'm like, all right, well, we're here. So it's okay. And then for your second question, which your second question was
the playfulness.
I realized really early on in watching people watching is that no one is actually paying attention to anybody else because they're all worried about their own insecurities. That was another one of those like thoughts that I had when I was really young. Like, everyone's so insecure. They're like, oh, they're looking at me, but they're too busy looking at themselves being insecure to other people. And when I kind of just decided that I was going to be outside of my shell too, I thought, okay, well, if I approach them first, then I'm still in control, right? And if you set the terms and conditions of your relationship at the very beginning, and that's one of those like cheat codes to life that like no one tells you, that like what you negotiate as a relationship in the very beginning is what has to be consistent all the way through. And so if I say, hey, I like you and we're going to be friends at the very beginning, then that's what you expect from me. You expect me to like you and to be open and to be fun and to be connected. And when I looked at other children and when I looked at how kids play and I looked how adults play, that wasn't what's happening. The adults were like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Are they? Like, do they? I'm not sure. And kids were like, I like you. You like me. I like your shoes. You want to play? Like it was just that difference. And so for me, when I was like creating the adult that I wanted to be in my head and like how I was going to engage, I was like, no, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep following things that make more sense, even though adults don't do that. And so now I'm like, hey, let's play. And people are like, okay. Yeah. Okay. And I can bring out the childlike in other people and remind them of what that's like. Cause we really are just 12-year-olds walking around in adult bodies with bills and stuff. That's really it. Like, I mean, my husband's 11 years older than me and I realized that he is still 12 on a daily basis. I am reminded that man is still 12 and I too am still, that 12-year-old who just wants to make a difference. So.
Calling it out again.
It's right? True.
Yeah. You talk about the program you've got and how you've used the word genius a few times, honoring or, illuminating people's genius. And my question, I want to flip it now to you. What's your genius?
So what I discovered in the process of trying to untap the genius in other people is I realized that I am a genius in some ways, because how I maneuver in the world is as unique as my fingerprint. And I knew that was the case for other people, but in the process of like, pointing the finger at other people, you are unique and you can, those three other ones pointing back at me kind of a thing, I had to kind of do some reflection on myself. So for me, there are a few things that invisible year really those invisible years really helped me hone into that now I use as the genius. One is I listen with my entire body, like all of my senses are a part of my listening process. And I can hear things that aren't being said. It's a lot of the time it's not being said that is actually the truth as opposed to what is being said. And so that particular social, emotional, like intelligence, is something that I think I got to hone in because I had all those years of being an observer of humans. Right. But the other thing is I'm really good at recognizing patterns and disrupting patterns and like saying like, hey, this is a pattern. We can change it here. And I really geek out over like spreadsheets and like systems and things of that sort. So all those things are like my favorite things. If I can organize it, if I could like build it like Legos, in all day, every day. I think we've geeked out about that, like just creating the systems. So those are things that I bring to the table, that are naturally like exciting for me, and that I can figure out like this when someone else is like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh no, it's so simple. Here's the pattern, blah, 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 blah. Here's how you change it right there. That one spot right there, change that one piece, do something different right there, and your pattern will change. Oh, like, so that is what I bring to the table. That is a little different than maybe somebody else.
You know, I love the way that you're presenting this, and I just need to call out, like, this is the 6-Star Business Podcast, and we always ask our guests, you know, what does it mean to be 6-star? And you can answer that in a minute, but I just want to call out, and for the listeners that repeatedly listen to every episode and who are engaged and aligned with 6-star, Monica is living and breathing what it is to be 6-star. And the reason is because you're honoring your genius. You're coming from yourself first, not from a product. You haven't woken up one day and said, right, I'm going to sell shoes. Let me just be the most, you know, amazing shoemaker in the world. You've healed yourself. You've gone back within. You've done the deep introspection work. You've got this level of awareness. You're responding to your environment in relationship to you. And that, I think, is the necessary ingredient that we all sometimes, well, we all need it, but we're not taught to do it. It's not fashionable. It's not sexy. It's not what our society teaches. And, you know, last night we were in a roundtable, a 6-star roundtable, and we're talking about, you know, the balance between purpose and profit, right? And do you have to sacrifice one to get the other, you know, or is it both? And how do you do that? And it was fascinating hearing the different insights. And one of the key things that came out for me was about the self first. You've always got to go in to the self. And that's what I know to be true as well. But it was great hearing one or two other people talking about that too. And you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's been your journey.
You got to let your freak flag fly, because like they're going to see it regardless, right? Like you gotta let who you are be what you're putting out there. One, because so the thing about lies, right? Like when you are lying is you have to remember all of your lies. Well, if you're not walking in your truth all the time, then you're essentially walking in a lie. And you can't remember, that's not sustainable. You can't keep that up because it's a lie, right? But if I'm walking in my actual truth, right? When I'm like, I love PowerPoints. If you came to me like, Monica, help me with a PowerPoint, I got you all day, every day. I'm going to be geeked out about it. It's going to get done so fast, and I'm going to have so much fun doing it. That's my truth, right? And if you come to me with a document that's like 8 pages long of just text, I'm going to look at you like, can you give me the bullet point version of this? Because I could lie and be like, okay, yeah, let me review it and I'll get back to you tomorrow. But that's a lie. That is not true. And I think we do that so often is we want to give, we want to serve, we want to support people. And we don't want to tell them that that's not what I'm good at, or that's not how I can serve you. And the most honest thing you can do, or the most polite thing you can do, is to be honest. Because at least with honesty, people have choices, right? But if you say, yeah, I got it, and you don't, then they don't have any options later. And so if you're going to be a 6-star business, you have to lean in with like, hey, guys, we are super dope at this. I am super dope at all of these things. This is my genius. These are the areas that I am working on and getting better. And I appreciate you working with me as I learn, as we go in this journey. And then here are the things that I just am not going to be able to do because I'm not built that way. And that's got to be okay, because there is somebody who is built that way, who geeks out on that one thing, who's amazing at that one thing. And they're going to be a great power partner for you. And it's going to be better for the economy, right? Because then it's like, well, we can spread the love, and they can have a little money and I can have a little money, and you can get what you want, and we all win in this situation. It's when we decide that we're going to be all things to all people is when we start walking in that lie. And when we walk in that lie, we are doomed to repeat history of failure after failure after failure because we're not walking in our authenticity. All of my people will tell you, if you want something pretty on a PowerPoint, I got you. If you want it proofread and punctual, I am a creative speller, very creative, and I am creative with grammar. And although I believe that if you read it, you know what I'm talking about, some people frown upon, like punctuation not being in the right place or creative spelling of words. And so you don't want me, you don't want me to be a part of the copywriting team. You just don't want that, right? And so when we can kind of live in those honesties about ourselves and be okay with it and be okay for other people to say, hey, I'm not really that good at it. That's not my strong suit, but I can help you in another way. If we could all do that, right? That allow that grace, then imagine all of us would probably be in jobs that we really want to do. And I think we can solve traffic. Like, like the people who are, we can kind of like alleviate some stress from them. We can have healthier families because people aren't feeling like they had to put up a facade all day. And when they come home, they don't want to deal, or they have to kind of medicate or self-soothe all of that inauthenticity that they spent all day. I think if we could get people to just tap into what they love, like their passion, like what makes them happy. Like I said, and anytime I was serving someone in any job, it didn't matter what it was, I was happy. I was always happy. It didn't matter how much money I was making either, because if I got to spend 8 hours a day, I want to be happy. I want to spend 8 hours of bliss, not 8 hours of misery, to spend 2 hours at home before I go to bed to find some happiness, or wait until the weekend. No, you want to spend your whole day that way. And I think everyone should. And I think there's a job for everyone out there that needs to be done. And there's somebody who wants to do it better than me. And it doesn't have to be me, and it's okay. And it doesn't have to be you. If your job, if you're looking at your business right now and there's a job in your business that you hate, you loathe, every time you have to do it, your soul leaves your body, like just starts leaving, and you have to catch your soul and tie it to your ankle so that it stays in your body, then you need to outsource that. Somebody else needs to do that job. Give it away, pay somebody. Everybody will be better for it. And that's just my 2 cents. That was unsolicited. There you go.
No, I love that. I want to circle back. You actually said something about, one of your genius is the ability to notice patterns.
Yes.
The 6-Star business came about as a result of, a bunch of people who started with, Av, and a bunch of people going, we don't really want to continue doing the way we're going because it's just not serving us. Right? Yeah. So how do we, as a group, try and do something? I believe that there's this type of conversation being had across the globe. Mm-hmm. The people are just starting to feel a little uneasy with where we've actually got to as a society, right? So I think it's a deeper thing than just business.
Yeah.
But I'd be really interested to know, there's a pattern. Mm-hmm. What's the thing that we who are trying to disrupt this current pattern and shift it to a 6-star? And my favorite saying is 6 stars is not 5 + 1. It's a different universe. It's a different way of thinking. So where's the disruptor? Where's the moment in that pattern? Have we arrived at that? Is this serendipitous moment where, the world has come to a particular point and, we've come out of COVID, we're moving into something else? Is this it?
I believe so. I truly believe so. And mostly because I've had so many more conversations with people, just kind of like, I can't go back to the way it was. I just can't. And I got to figure out something else. And I don't know what that something else is, but I can't go back to the way it was. So yes, I think the pandemic was the gift that we all asked for. Remember before the pandemic when everybody was like, oh, I wish I had so much more time. And we all told the lies that we were going to spend more time with our kids. That's not what we wanted. We didn't want more time with our kids. We were very happy when they went back to school. But what we did want is a bit more freedom to have like quality connections with people. And I think this time right now is the time. We've already been through the shift. So like there's this cycle of rebirth is what I teach all the time, right? And change is constant. So it's, it just happens over time. And there is an anatomy to it. So you're reborn into something, and then you have to come to an understanding, and then you build on that understanding. Then you sustain that for a period of time. There's a shift, and then you examine and develop what's next. I feel like the pandemic itself was the shift, right? And where we are right now is in this space of examining and developing, which is the best freaking time to plan. Because once you're in the rebirth, you're kind of already behind the curve, right? And I don't think we've been reborn yet. I think we are in that examine and develop. And the best way to disrupt that is to live in truth at this moment. What serves me? What does not serve me? And if it doesn't serve me, why doesn't it serve me? Is it the full thing, or is it just a piece of it? And I challenge you to do that in all 6 roles of your life, right? So do that for yourself. Like, what is serving me? Like, what's making me like be really awesome? And what's sucking about me right now? Like, how do I feel mind, body, soul, right? Do the same thing with your lifestyle, because we were sent to our room to think about what we did. Like, we all got that timeout notice. We all had to sit there in our little cubicles and think about what we did. And so now that the world is opening back up, don't go back to the same thing. Decide, what were you missing? What did you miss when everything was taken away? That's the most important, right? What did you miss? And it was probably birthday parties and weddings and like connection with family and hugging people, and like, not the stuff. You didn't miss the stuff. You didn't miss fighting for the stuff. You didn't miss having to work really hard to get the stuff. You missed the people, right? You missed the celebrations. You missed the hugs. So figure out what you missed in the pandemic, and then start working in that space of like, okay, I want more of that. And what else can I add to that? Think about like your career and like, how were you using your talent, passion, and training? And now what are you going to do with that? Right. And start thinking about your romantic partnerships or lack thereof, whatever that looks like for you. And like, what is serving you and what is not, and start opening those lines of communication with people and saying, hey, like, this is how I need to be loved. I didn't know this before, but now I do. Right. And nurturing and taking care of, children, puppy babies, and all those things. Like, rethink everything. My mom said, question everything. And I took it too literal, right? So I question everything in my life. I question everything. Does this make me happy? Am I sure? Okay, I am sure it makes me happy. Keep going with it. Oh, it doesn't make me happy? Well, how can I be more happy in this situation? Is there something I can do to improve it? Right? And then the same thing with the people that you were around. You didn't miss them. You didn't miss them during the pandemic. They weren't meant to be missed. You can love them from a distance. But if you like missed them, if you craved them, if it made you sad that you weren't around them, then it might be time. Or if they were the people who were in the trenches with you on Zoom 18 billion hours a day, or, they came and stood on the patio and waved at you just to see your face. Like, those kinds of things we can all reckon in our own lives. Right. And then when you're thinking about your business and what you're doing with that, is it the same old from before? Or are you ushering in a new normal? I'm building a parallel universe. I decided that institutions don't want to be changed. I cannot change what does not want to be changed. So I'm just going to create a parallel universe and invite as many people to my parallel universe as possible. And I do that by letting my freak flag fly, by finding other people who are weirdos like me, like Eveline, like my girl. We talked and I was like, oh my gosh, we're the same person, different continent, same person, right? But have like a different vision of what life could be. Find your weirdos, find your tribe of weirdos, hang out with them all the time, and start building together that parallel universe. And now is the time. There is no like, oh, well, I'll do it later or when I retire. No. Now's the time to start actually doing those things.
Absolutely. And all those questions that you just said, like you encourage people to ask themselves, they're the questions that bring out the clarity, bring out the awareness, bring out the truth of who we are, and enable us to be our unique selves in the world. Yeah. And that is the first step to being 6-star.
Yeah.
and it's about doing things differently. So just for those listeners that are not getting this, these are the steps. These are the steps to getting to be 6-star. You start with this ABC.
ABC.
It's not about the business strategy or the product mix or your marketing. No. It starts with this.
Yeah.
It starts with the self.
90% of the conversations I have with coaches, I ask them, why did you want to do this in the first place? And every single one of them out of that 90% say, well, I didn't have this for myself. I couldn't find it when I needed it, so I built it, right? Those people are going to be successful. They're going to be successful. They're the ones who I nurture and I help and I support. But if they say, well, I thought it would be a good idea because, somebody out there may need it. That's not going to sustain you when it gets hard and you're not making enough money because you had a low quarter. You're going to want to check out, right? But if you're like, no, I needed somebody to hang in there with me while I was getting my stuff together, and this is necessary in the world, those are the ones who are going to be successful in this new change. Because what I love about adversity, and when like something happens, like the recessions and the depressions and all those things, what happens is the cream rises to the top, and all the fluff and the fallacies and all the crap that starts to fall away, and you start to see what was really happening, right? So we start noticing like, okay, who was corrupt? All of a sudden you get all of this like news about like all these corrupt people and all of the bad intentions that were happening there. And the cream of the crop get carried to the top because everyone's like, no, they're good. We want them to stay in business. We want to keep them going. So do come from that space of full impact and intention. I wanted to do this because I had a need, and I want other people to not have to go through the pain that I went through, right? Or I want to shorten their pain, or I want to heal where I needed to be healed. That's where most, especially in the service-based community, that's mostly where people are coming from. So lean in on that, and don't be afraid to be yourself in that, because someone needs to hear it in your tone of voice, coming from a face that looks like yours, with the stature and the background that you have. And that's unique to you. They are waiting for you to be the lighthouse, for them to know where to come home to shore. But if you are pretending to be something that you're not, if you're not leaning into your story, your face, your voice, how you say things. I cuss a lot. It's just another word in the dictionary for me. It's for emphasis and to make sure that you understand. If someone's offended by that, I'm not their lighthouse, and it's okay. I don't have to be their lighthouse, because there are like a bunch of other people. 1 out of 10 people are going to be like, hey girl, I see you. You speaking my language. I'm coming over. So just be you. Just be you. And the more you know you, the easier it is for you to be you. So you have to kind of date yourself and get to know yourself and know what you love and what you don't love, and asking all those questions all the time, and continuously ask your questions, because you don't know this, but change is constant, and you are constantly changing. And what you thought you knew about yourself, you really don't. Every day I learn something new about me. I'm like, damn, girl, know that. That's crazy. Every day I learn something new about myself. And sometimes it's because someone points that out and I have to go, oh, you know what? You're right. I see that pattern now. I see where you can see it that way. I got it. So just, staying in that space for sure.
I love how you have fun with yourself and life. just gold. I wish we were closer, Monica. I would just, we could hang out and have these moments of just laughter and joy, as we're doing right now. I know. I noticed the time, and I've got a couple more questions. I know Steve wants to ask you something though, because he's sitting there and he's just like, no, you're okay. All right. You
do your thing.
So
more to close.
All right. You mentioned the 6-star thing before, but I wanted to ask the question cleanly so that you could then expand and speak, so that we're, the listeners can really get this. So what does being 6-star mean to you?
Oh, out of this world, right? When I am the wealthiest is when my time is being spent exactly how I want to spend it, and I don't have to discount that time. So this time that I'm spending with you all right here, right now, having this very fun conversation, right? Fully engaged with you is gold for me, for y'all, and hopefully for the listeners. I always think that if we're having fun, they're having fun listening to us as well. And a lot of the time when we're trying to be a 5-star business, it's not about being intentional in this moment. It's about hitting the mark, right? Or hitting the directness. I have done all of the things that I'm supposed to do. I can't do any more for you. I believe a 6-star business it's not about what I need to do for you, but it's how I can be in this moment with you and serving you in a way that you need to be served in this moment. And if I can make sure that everything in my business is aligned so that while I'm sitting here with you, I am not worried about the email that I was supposed to send or replying to someone else, or do I need to pick up my kids from school? If I could just be in this moment with you and I can give you everything, that money follows excellence. That's what my mom told me. Money follows excellence. If you are excellent, people will pay you for excellence. And so being intentional and in this moment and putting whatever you need to put in place when you're dealing with people, whether it's your power partners or your collaborators or your customers, the clients, or whoever it is that you're working with at the time. If you can give them 100% of your attention in that time, then you are a 6-star business. Because anything and everything happens in divine timing, unless the world is literally unless there is an actual fire, there's no reason for you not to be there. But so many times we're so busy, and I'm a very busy person too, right? But I am the master of my calendar so that I can be 100% included in and connected with the people that I'm working with and dealing with and collaborating with and all those things so that I can show up 100% me and in my excellence, and we can laugh and have a good time. And then the money will flow however it needs to flow because I open that vessel in that way. So if you want to know what I think a 6-star business is, an intentional, present business. That's what it is to me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, this is I've been on a number of these sort of conversations with Av, and we've had some really fantastic guests along with some really wonderful moments of gold. And I don't want to say that this was the best that I've ever been involved in, but that's what I'm going to say.
But it is, right?
It I've got goosebumps. It's just it's amazing. What the one piece of when Av saw me, what I really loved was, find your weirdos, find your tribe, find the people who resonate with you, who have the same values and thoughts. And I think that's what we've sort of fallen into unintentionally and serendipitously with the 6-star business. But we're also, there are other tribes that I belong to that are of a similar nature. So I love that. The other piece for me was that sort of the combination of authenticity and selflessness, but with intention, so yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. The way you described it right now, it's like, that feels like a tightrope. It's like authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. But fun, right? You're in a circus enjoying it. Like it could be scary. I'm on a tightrope.
Really?
And it could feel scary, or it could feel, wow, this is exciting. And when I get to the end, how am I going to feel when I get to the end? It's that it's having that mindset or mind shift around the context where you're at. So yeah I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love that.
Thanks. Monica, what do you think is the biggest barrier to people becoming 6-star?
The biggest barrier It's the excuses that we allow ourselves to have, right? Like, oh, well, I would if, right? Or I know or I should, but I can't because of this. And, in all of the experiences that I had, life is hard. It is hard, but ultimately hard doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter in the end, especially when what you're trying to do is so important to humanity. And I know that sounds like dun, 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 big, like superhero, like, like humanity needs you, but we do need you. And it doesn't matter how little you think your thing is, that you could be selling a little widget, right? Or the grocer at the grocery store. But humanity needs you to show up in that space as 100% you in joy. In joy, right? Because if you show up in joy to serve, that is contagious. It is lovely. And you can turn someone's life around by a smile or a random hug, right? You can turn someone's life around. So if you can just get out of the excuse, so I would do that, but this, that, or the other. No, when it's necessary, show up and be intentional and care for those who are in front of you. I always say God takes care of those who takes care of others. The universe always provides for those who are taking care of others. And you will always be cared for in that way if you just show up without the excuses of like, oh, I would help you, but, or I would do that next thing in my business, but no. Do everything you can, give everything you got. Don't leave anything on the table, because you don't know what serendipitous little moment that one little thing could have brought you. Look, really quick, short story. This is supposed to be short. It's not short. Sorry. I helped a stranger on the street. I smiled, actually. It came from a smile. So I smiled at this person as they were walking by, and he goes, you're a very nice girl. I'm opening a store. You come work for me. What? Little short Persian man in West LA. That smile was the serendipitous moment that had me have a backup when I got let go from my fundraising position, and got me consulting for a brand new boutique, which then I built a complete couture business from, and was able to then kind of catapult me into all these ways. You don't know who that is going to be. So don't have any excuses. If you can serve, if you can give, just do it. And do it on your own terms. Obviously be safe, right? But you never know, because even a smile can be the difference in where you are now to where you're trying to go.
You know what I love about you is you actually demonstrate and live and breathe what you advise, what you preach, what you speak about. Because I asked the question of what was the biggest barrier. You answered that, but you actually gave us what to do to get out of that. So that's showing up and giving and being in joy, because that's what you do best, right? And and when you speak and you give of yourself, it's just, that's the goal. That's the connection. And the people listening to this, you're probably feeling it just like I'm feeling it right now, and Steve's feeling it. Thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up and giving of yourself, and just, honoring the beauty and the weirdness of you, and giving it to the world, and having fun at the same time, right? Inspiring people to be themselves. And that is just the greatest gift.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We did not say we were going to be boring adults when we grow up. So that's not on my list of things to do. So I'm happy to have fun with you and everyone as often as I possibly can. Keeps us young.
It does. Yeah. So the final thing, have you got any kind of tidbit or little piece of advice to leave our listeners with as they go about their day? Lives.
Just say yes to the things that make you happy. Say no to the things that don't. and remember that you have choices. So choose to be great.
Love it. Perfect. Steve, what have you got? Any final comments?
No, nothing. I got nothing. Choose to be great. Say yes to what you love and no to what you don't. There's so much. I'm going to listen to this one over and over again. It was sensational. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica.
Personally, I've got so much from it. That's why I love being on the front row seat, because I get to hear it first. It's fantastic.
I love that. Thanks, guys, for having me so much. This has been so much fun.
It has. So grateful. You have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and I can't wait to hang out with you again. Thanks, Monica.